All right, welcome everybody to DSLR Fast Start. My name is John Greengo, and in this class we're going to be looking at the Nikon D3100. We're going to be looking real closely at all the buttons and all the menus and everything else. This is a camera that is a very, very capable camera of taking professional quality pictures, in my opinion. But it doesn't happen automatically. You do need to know how to work the camera itself, and that's what this class is all about, learning how to work the camera itself. And so I do want to throw out a quick thanks to B&H Photo for supplying this camera for today's class. They've been a great supporter of ours here at creativeLIVE and a good source for cameras and lenses and all the other goodies that go along with photography and video. And so thanks a lot to B&H. So very good. And here's the plan for the day. We're going to be kind of breaking things up and doing things piece by piece to start with. To begin, we're going to go with a product overview. We're going to look at the camera. We're going to look at what you've bought into. Perhaps you've never owned a digital SLR. Perhaps you've never owned a Nikon product. I just want to let you know kind of what you've got yourself into. Next up, we're going to be talking about some photography basics. And as I said, some people are purchasing an SLR for the very first time, and they've never taken a photography class. And I apologize, but there's going to be some things that maybe aren't super easy to understand because you do need to have a good understanding of not only this camera but photography as well before you can really dive into photography itself and start getting a lot of great results on a predictable basis. And so we're going to go through a few photography basics just to make sure everyone's up to a certain level of understanding of some of the basics. And then we dive into the camera full force with basically just going around the camera, top, all the sides, looking at every button and talking about what it's there for, what its important is, when you would use it. And then after that, we're going to get into the menu system, which is where a lot of features are quote-unquote buried in the menu system. And many things in there you will never ever use, and that's perfectly normal. There's just a lot of options for a lot of different people with different types of photography. But we're going to go through each of those items one by one. And then probably my favorite section is the camera operation. And this is where we put all these little bits of information that we have been learning throughout the class together all at the same time. And this is where we'll set the camera up for different types of photography. And so we'll talk about portrait photography, landscape, and other types of photography, how you would change the focusing system, the metering system, or anything else on the camera to fit that situation the best. And then we'll end up the whole day talking about some lenses and accessories. There's tons of them out there, but we're going to kind of stay narrow focused on just a few ones that I think are maybe the most pertinent for someone who's just purchased the D3100. I hope it sounds like a good plan because it's my only plan.
Sounds like a plan.
Excellent. All right, so first off, with this camera you will get an instruction manual. And it's got 208 pages, and I figure if you spend about 2 minutes per page, you're going to spend about 7 hours reading this thing. Now, the class that we have here today, well, it's going to last about 4 hours. So how is it possible that we can take 7 hours of information and stick it into 4 hours? Well, we could just pull out the instruction manual and read every other page, but that might not be the best way to do this. So I've had to go through the camera and go through the manual and go through everything else on the camera to figure out what's most important for the most typical users. And so there are some things that we don't have time to get into. There's some things that I'm going to pass over. I will kind of mention those things, and if that is something that interests you, have at it. Dive into that instruction manual and read up about all the technical specifications. But I'm going to kind of stay concentrated where most people would be using this camera. As I mentioned before, this class is not a Photography 101 class. If you want to learn the fundamentals of photography, there are some very good classes out there, and in fact, I will even mention one that I can recommend to learn photography. And so we will cover it very, very quickly here, but if this is your first foray into somewhat serious photography, this is a good place. Understanding the camera that you are working with is a great thing to do to start with. If you enjoy working with the camera and you want to get better results, I highly recommend a photography class. And once you take one class, there's always another class, and there's plenty of ways to expand on this. It's a lifelong learning thing. I've been doing photography for more than 20 years now, and I'm still constantly learning things and seeking out new books and new classes, and it's a lot of fun because there's a lot of ways to grow in this. So let's get started with a little product overview on what you have just bought yourself into with your new D3100. You have got yourself a Nikon camera. Nikon is a Japanese company that has been around for quite some time. They specialize in making cameras and a variety of optical products. They're probably most known for their consumer and professional cameras. They like to be known also for their lenses. They have binoculars and scopes. They have medical imaging instruments. It's a reasonably large company in Japan that is very good at what they do, if you ask me. Just a very, very brief history on them. They were founded in 1917. It was actually a formation of 3 different Japanese optical companies. Got off kind of to a slow start with World War II interrupting business there, but after the war, they got right into it, started making consumer cameras. Their first 35 millimeter rangefinder camera, which is a different type of camera than this, was introduced in 1948. And then in 1959, a big year for Nikon users, they introduced their first SLR. And we're going to go into what an SLR is in just a moment here. But that camera has essentially the same lens mount as this camera right here in front of me. There is kind of an evolution that has taken place with the lenses over a period of time, so you're not able to take this lens and put it on that 1959 camera and vice versa, but there's a great interchangeability with the Nikon lenses. 1986, they brought out their first autofocus SLR, which is kind of a big change with the modern technology. And then in 1999, they brought out their first digital camera, the Nikon D1. And for any of you who've just purchased this 18 megapixel camera, it should probably cost well under $1,000. This D1 cost $5,000 and had 2.7 megapixels on it. So what you are getting today just blows the doors off of what was available a little more than 10 years ago. The SLR camera system is quite extensive. Nikon makes a collection of cameras from entry level to professional, and the D3100 is very much on the entry level end of it. So if you do plan to get into the system with plans to expand and grow, you have lots of room to grow. And with the lenses, that's one of the things that Nikon is best known for, is having lots of great lenses. So pretty much anything you can think of doing, they probably make a lens to do it. It might be kind of expensive, but they have it. They do have a wide variety of lenses from inexpensive to very expensive. And then one of the things that Nikon specializes in is in very, very good flash technology. So if you have a need to add flash, this camera does have a built-in flash, but it is somewhat limited with its power. You do have additional flashes that you can hook up, as well as hooking up multiple flashes all at the same time. So there's a great creativity that you can have with this camera with that flash system. Now the kind of the heritage of the D3100, it is a new camera. It's been out on the market at the taping of this show just for a few months. But it is very much based on predecessor cameras. And what they've done is they keep tweaking and modifying a preceding camera and improving it as it goes along the line. And so every about 18 months to 2 years, you can expect a new version of this camera. And this is just the latest, greatest of their entry-level cameras. Now, when this camera first came out, some of the things that it was notable for is that it had 14 megapixels. A lot of the previous Nikons had either 10 or 12 megapixels, so Nikon is upping the ante a little bit on resolution. The ISO, the highest rating that it used to be able to go to was 3200, and it's gone up to 12,800, so the camera is much better in low light conditions than previous cameras. The previous version did not have live view so that you could look at the LCD monitor on the back of the camera. This one has that, which works out well for certain types of photography. The previous version did not have video. This one does have video at full HD resolution. So you can start shooting short videos with this. So we're going to do a little box opening here, and we got a lot of little different things in the box here, and we're going to go ahead and just open this live and take a look at what we have in here. So you'll get a warranty card that kind of makes it official that you own that particular piece of equipment, and the serial numbers are from Nikon. In here will also be your instruction manual, and as I said, you want to have that out because we're not going to cover everything in the instruction manual. There's usually a few things buried in there that you'll find if you go through it carefully. Let's start with the lens. And so This is a kit that is available from B&H and other camera stores that comes supplied with an 18 to 55 millimeter lens. It's a good general purpose lens, and it's the one we'll be using for our class here. Take off the rear cap and the front cap. Go for the camera body next. And there we go. Our brand new Nikon D3100 has been born, but we got to bring it to life. So we're going to put the lens on it. We're going to match up our white dot right here with our white dot right there and mount it on. So that's good, but we're not ready to shoot pictures yet because we need power. So we're going to get in here and get the battery. Our accessory package. Going to set this off to the side. Comes with a few little accessories. We have the battery charger, and this might be different depending on what country you're in, but it's got standard plugs for the United States here. And we have a battery that we secretly went in and charged last night. We do have a camera strap in here, but hey, who needs this when we have the Black Rapid strap? It's a nice strap though. Some people don't like it because it says Nikon, but some people love it because it says Nikon. And then we got some little accessories. This is a little eye cap. Let me pop this open here. A lot of people don't understand what this is for, and actually I'll do this as kind of a bonus here. I wasn't planning on doing this. This eyepiece slides off, and this is a cover that you would cover over the eyepiece to prevent light coming in from the back of the viewfinder. And this is important if you're shooting a self-timer because your eye is normally covering it, and in a self-timer it's not. But the other solution, if you find it irritating to take this on and off, is to use manual exposure, which is something that I recommend for a lot of situations. So we're going to install the battery here. Pretty simple operation. Make sure I got the contacts going in the right direction and load it in. And let's go ahead and just get some of this stuff cleared off the desk. And so with the camera, let me make sure I got all this straightened out. The memory card on it is going to go right here in the side door, like that. And make sure I get this all centered up so we're in the right spot. And so that's our camera. That's what you can expect to do in the box opening of the camera. It also comes with some software for downloading the raw images and some software from Nikon for viewing images. And if you're like a lot of photographers, you may be interested in other software out there. One of my favorite pieces is Adobe's Lightroom. It's a very good system. There's a lot of books, there's a lot of classes on it. It's a great program for viewing your images, for editing your images, and then developing your images. So if you want to improve them, whether it's just little crops or a little bit of saturation and contrast adjustment, it's a great program for doing that. But we're going to be concentrating on the camera today. Now the battery, will remind you, takes about 2 hours to charge, and depending on how you use the camera, you can expect to get somewhere around 400 to 600 shots. This may vary according with how much live view and image review you do on the camera. So, when you go through the instruction manual, you're going to hit upon a section that talks about care and handling of the camera. And it's going to say things like, don't drop it, don't get it wet, don't get it too hot, don't take it apart, don't leave it by a giant magnet, don't store it with lots of corrosive chemicals, don't handle the power plug with wet hands, don't fire the flash at someone driving a car, don't use around flammable gas, and don't swallow the battery. In essence, yeah, we get it, don't be stupid with it. But there's two things that people often have questions on. And the first one is, the camera is not waterproof, do not get it wet. And people usually say, what does that really mean, don't get it wet? The outside shell of the camera is mostly made of plastic, and plastic doesn't really get harmed when you get it a little bit wet. It's the electronics on the inside. And so this camera is not weather sealed. So if water gets in the wrong area, it could potentially cause a problem with the circuitry of the camera. So this is not a camera I would leave outside in a rain. Okay, now if it was raining and I really wanted to go outside and take pictures, I would be pretty careful and quick about shooting with it. It'd be great if I had a friend with an umbrella, or if I just stuck it under my coat until I actually needed the shot. If you do plan to be out in the rain shooting with the camera for an extended period of time, there are rain covers that you can put that go over the camera, and you can kind of reach in through holes or through the bottom to fire the camera. And so a very, very light rain for a short period of time is generally not going to be a problem. The other thing that it will say in there is use of non-Canon accessories could damage the camera and may void your warranty. This is Nikon's way of saying that they're not going to be liable if you do something stupid and hook up some crazy device to your camera that damages your camera. It's also them kind of saying that they would prefer that you buy the Nikon accessories. And there are all sorts of things that you're going to hook up. Obviously, we've already put on the lens. We've put in a memory card and a battery. You can buy all of those from other manufacturers if you want. You can add on flash units. And as we will see in a moment, we can hook up GPS units, different USB cables, AV, HDMI cables to it. So there's a lot of little plugins and things that you can add on to the camera. In general, you're probably not going to have a problem with most other accessories. There's certain things that I would look real strongly at. With Nikon, I would look real strongly at the Nikon lenses to see what they offer. Maybe they don't have something you need and there's another manufacturer that makes them. In general, that is not going to damage your camera. The camera may not be able to communicate with the lens like it does a Nikon lens. And so maybe there's a feature of the camera or some sort of data that isn't traveled back and forth. And so there may be something that you miss out on in that case. Nikon makes great flashes, so I often recommend Nikon flashes. And so be aware when you are using some of those other accessories, they're probably not going to damage the camera, but they may not give you all the features of the Nikon products. Okay, so for preparing the camera, there's a number of things that you want to do. You want to charge that battery, hour and a half or 2 hours to charge the battery. We've already attached the lens. We've put in a memory card. Go ahead and turn your camera on if you have your camera in front of you. If you're watching online, go ahead and turn your camera on. This may be the last time I ever say this, but put your camera in that green auto mode right on top. So you got your mode dial right in auto, and go ahead and take a picture. I just want to make sure that everyone's camera is working, and fire this camera. Picture's working, getting an image in back of our students there. And so I just want to make sure the camera is working before we hit on for the rest of this. Now there's one thing that would be handy if you want to follow along on this class, and we're going to kind of dive ahead right now and do something really complicated, is we're going to go into the menu system. So I'm going to press Menu, and over on the left-hand side, we want to get down to the Setup menu, which is the wrench. And so if the wrench turns yellow, you know you're in the Setup menu. You will then tab to the right, and what we want to do is we want to go down about halfway to something called Auto Off Timers. See if I can find it here. There we go. Auto Off Timers. And it is set on normal right now. And we want to change this to long, because when we're working with the camera, we don't want the menus to turn off. And so go in there, set it to long, and press OK. And then you can just press down halfway on the shutter release so that our menus will not be turning off on us when we get into the menu section. All right, now to learn more about this camera, you got to know the camera, but you also have to know photography. And I want to talk a little bit about some photography here. I teach a class here at creativeLIVE called Fundamentals of Digital Photography. This is something that you can download from creativeLIVE. It's a 10-week class. It's got more than 20 hours of instruction. It doesn't matter what camera you have. It just teaches you the basics of photography. So if you want to learn more about photography, this is probably the best way that I know of to get started in it. It's not particularly geared towards any type of photography, but it's good base knowledge for anyone, whether they're going to be starting to shoot weddings or shooting cars or horse races. It doesn't matter. This is just good information that all photographers need to know. And so this next 5 minutes is kind of a cut from that class, if you will. And first thing I want to talk about is just what is a digital single lens reflex camera. Well, it's a camera that obviously has one main lens on it, and this is where light travels through. You'll have this one very high quality lens. Now there are a variety of lenses. I'll talk a little bit about these in the accessory section, but they may have a wide angle of view, or they may have a very telephoto angle of view. So there's a wide variety of different lenses. When you focus the the lens elements will move back and forth, and that's why your lens will sometimes extend, or you'll see the elements moving forward and back. It's so that you can focus on different subjects. Within that lens is an aperture, and this is an opening that opens and closes. It doesn't completely close, but it changes its opening. And so as you adjust the aperture or the f-stop setting, it lets in different amounts of light. And this is one of the ways in which you can control how much light is coming in your camera. Now the f-stops here, you'll notice it's not a huge difference between any one f-stop, but it is letting in actually double the light or half the light with each one of these steps. And so it's a great way for controlling the light coming in your camera. But it doesn't just control the amount of light, it also controls the depth of field. And so in this example, we're going to go ahead and open the lens all the way to 1.4. This is what we call a very fast lens. It lets in a lot of light. And those two little red hash marks indicate what's in focus, the near focus and the far focus. And as we change the aperture on this lens, each setting, we get a little bit more depth of field. And so we're started out at very shallow depth of field, and you can see that the photograph of the yardstick is becoming more and more in focus. The numbers down at the very bottom are becoming clearer and clearer with each step in this aperture change. And so memorizing these aperture numbers, being very familiar with them, knowing where to turn them for any given picture is very important. It's one of those decisions that you want to be able to make very, very quickly. And so here we are at f22, getting as much depth of field as possible with this lens in this particular situation. And so that's how aperture and depth of field work together. So once the light has traveled through the lens, it travels back a little bit further and will hit a mirror in the camera. And this is where the reflex portion of the single lens reflex is. It bounces the light upward into what's called a ground glass or focusing screen. And an image is formed on this screen. Now, from there, it goes up through a prism system. And this is so that it's nice and easy to see as you hold the camera straight up to your eye. It bounces the light around, and this is the path that it takes as the light travels to your eye. Now, when you actually press the shutter release, the mirror needs to get up and out of the way so that the light can travel back to the digital image sensor. And this is what has replaced film in these cameras. And this image sensor is a big part about photography, and we're going to talk just a little bit more about the size of this in a moment. Before it actually gets to the sensor, it does need to pass through a shutter, which is a two-curtain system. It has the first curtain, which is actually a series of blades, which slides away to expose the light to the sensor. After a predetermined amount of time, the second curtain will come and close behind it. And that is exposing the sensor for the picture. Then the shutter unit will return to its original position and the mirror will come back down. And it will do this every time you take a picture. So we have two ways of controlling light. We have the aperture as well as the sensor, as well as the shutter. We have two ways of controlling the light, the aperture and the shutter. And so being familiar with shutter speeds is the other thing that's very important. Here we have a very fast shutter speed at 2,000th of a second, stopping a bird in flight. A 500th of a second is good for stopping human motion. So whether it's sports, dance, or any sort of human activity, a 500th will generally do the job at stopping the action. 125th is kind of a in-between aperture, good for something that's not moving too quickly, like some camels here in the desert. But you take an animal and you start moving them pretty quickly. Here at a 30th of a second, you're going to get a lot of blur. And blur isn't always a bad thing. In some cases, it can be kind of a nice thing. Here at an 1/8 of a second, we have some people walking, and you can see that they're not very sharp. The bridge is sharp because I used a tripod to take this photograph, but the people are blurry, and this is the type of blur that you can expect with people walking at an 1/8 of a second. As we get down to some pretty slow shutter speeds, a lot of people like using this for photographing moving water. It gives it that very soft cotton candy type look at a 1/2 second exposure. And this camera, you can do very long exposures. You can go as long as 30 seconds on the camera quite easily. So this is actually waves rolling in around the shores down in Monterey, California. That cloud look is actually just water moving back and forth. And so being familiar with the right apertures as well as the right shutter speed is very important. Now, kind of getting back to that sensor thing. When you go into the camera store and you look at all these cool cameras that are out today, what's maybe not so evident but really important is the size of the sensor in the camera, because that is really at the heart of its ability. And there's a variety of sizes in a variety of cameras, and they aren't always plainly listed on the camera what size sensor is in there. And as I say, there's a variety of sensors, and with cameras that use interchangeable lenses, there's three sizes that are quite common, and the D3100 uses the middle of those three larger sizes. Now, if you recall using 35mm film in the past, that had a certain size to it. It was 24mm by 36mm. And they do make sensors that are exactly 24 by 36mm in size, and they call those full-frame sensors. And so it's very convenient. If you're used to using film, you just get a digital full-frame sensor and all the lenses and everything stays exactly the same. And it has what we call a 1.0 crop factor. The lenses act exactly as they do on a 35mm camera. The small downside to these sensors is that they're really expensive. And so one of the things that Nikon did is they produced a smaller sensor to make cameras more affordable. Now this sensor is smaller by a factor of 1.5, and so it has a crop factor of 1.5. And so if you're using lenses, things are going to look a little bit different. You're kind of getting a cropped angle of view from your traditional lenses. The third of the largest sizes is what's called APS-C. It is something that is being used by Canon, and it's a 1.6 size crop on that, and so it's just a little bit different in size. So it's good to know what size sensor you have in your camera so you know what lenses to get and why they look the way that they do. And this is just a little briefer on how a digital single lens reflex camera works. If you haven't taken a class on photography, I highly recommend looking into my Fundamentals of Digital Photography class. It's a good class. You can kind of study at your own pace. We go through shutter speeds and apertures just like we talked about, but much more thoroughly, and we talk about everything from lighting up to composition, so it's a good starting class. So take a look at that with creativeLIVE.